Welcome to the beginning of my Oathsworn painting series. I'm super excited to start painting the minis from this game, and in this video I'll just explain my plan, painting order, and what I'll include or omit from the videos. And you can watch me painting this little Oathsworn map marker thing while I'm doing all this explaining. I know there are a lot of excellent Oathsworn painting videos and tutorials out there already, but I think they tend to be a little intimidating and advanced. I'm going to do my gosh darndest to make my series as beginner-friendly and approachable as possible, so that it's easy to follow along. Maybe you've never painted any minis before, maybe you paint your board game minis casually, or maybe you just don't want to put hours of effort into every model in the box. Or multiple huge boxes, I guess. No matter your skill level or experience, I want you to know that you can do it, and that I'll try to make this series work for you. I'll be attempting to do this by keeping the basic painting steps fairly straightforward. As with some of my other tutorial videos, I'll first paint the mini to a good tabletop standard as sort of an initial stopping point, and you can choose to be done there, but then I'll continue on with an advanced section, refining the paint job a bit more and potentially using some more advanced techniques. You can try any of these advanced section steps or techniques anytime you feel ready for them. The best way to grow and improve is by pushing yourself to try new things, but you also don't have to force it. Painting your models to the basic stopping point will still leave you with awesome looking models that are ready to hit the table. I also won't be doing any airbrushing or using any oil paints in this series, since I want to keep everything easy to replicate if you don't have those supplies, or if you can't use them safely. At the start of each video, I'll show the important mold line removal and cleanup steps for the minis I'm painting, but obviously this is always optional, especially given the number of minis in this game. I won't show the process of actually scraping the mold lines or filling the gaps, since that would just be the same thing over and over again. And depending on my whims, I might not bother myself with some of the mold lines or model cleanup if I don't feel motivated for it. And here's the order I'll tackle painting this game in. I think first I'll paint up the allies, which will serve as an easy starting point to dip our toes into the game. After that I'll move on to the terrain box, which will be another low-stakes project that I imagine will probably be used in most game scenarios. This will also make it easier to make sure each mini's base is painted to roughly match the terrain and scenery, so that everything looks nice and unified. After that it'll be on to the stars of the show, the playable characters. Once some, or all of those are done, I'll start painting all the monsters, roughly in scenario order since I plan on painting the monsters as my game group plays through the campaign. I'll do my best to provide plenty of warning when there will be spoilers, and my goal will be to get these monsters or new minis painted in 1 or 2 painting sessions, so that I can have them ready to play with before the next gaming session. So I'm going to try something new with this series when it comes to paints and supplies. Since this series is all about being beginner friendly, I'm going to limit myself to using a relatively constrained number of paints and such in each video. I plan on using this core assemblage of paints as my bread and butter, and for each tutorial video, as necessary, I'll add in a few extra paint colors when needed. But my goal will be to both make the videos a little bit more straightforward in terms of paints and colors, and to make it more budget friendly if you don't own a lot of paints already. Using a few extra colors in every video will also simulate slowly growing a collection of paint over time, rather than having to buy like $200 or $300 of materials up front before you've even painted anything. As a disclaimer, I'm just trying this system out, and I'll be reserving the right to totally bail on this decision if it's making painting too tedious or unenjoyable for me. For paint brands, I've selected mostly Pro Acryl paints and Army Painter 2.0 speed paints. These brands are widely available, affordable, and I'm really satisfied with both of them. I really like that the paints in these ranges behave fairly similar to one another, and they all have similar levels of thinness and coverage, and that should make them fairly approachable to start with if you're a beginner. Pro Acryl paints are fairly thin right out of the bottle and won't need too much thinning or dilution, which should be nice, since I know that when I was a beginner painter I struggled a lot with thinning my paints to the right consistency. If you buy Pro Acryl paints online, they also provide a small bundle discount, which is a nice way to sort of build your own starter set. And for the speed paints, I just chose the paints you get in the starter set, and I added the speed paint medium and an extra color. We'll have to do a little bit of mixing to concoct our own special color potions at times, but I'll guide you through that. In general, keep in mind that using fewer pots of paint means we'll have to do a little bit of color mixing on our own, but don't let that scare you at all. It's not too tricky. I'll make note of how I do it in my tutorials, and you can always buy some extra paint colors if you prefer using colors right out of the pot instead of mixing your own. Additionally, you absolutely don't need to use the brands of paint that I chose as well. Use whatever you have or whatever you prefer. I'll include a chart of some roughly equivalent colors from other popular paint brands in the video description for if you want to use Games Workshop, Vallejo, or Army Painter paints. If you want a different starter set of acrylic paints, maybe pick up the Vallejo Basic Colors USA set or the new Army Painter War Paints Fanatic starter set. If you don't like Army Painter speed paints, Vallejo Express paint is a great comparable alternative. Games Workshop contrast paint is also popular, but they are really expensive, so I can't really recommend them for their price point. And to give some explanation for the colors I've selected so far, I've looked over the artwork for the heroes and game board and such, and some recurring colors stand out to me a bit. The art uses a variety of green colors, warm and cold browns, a lot of steel metal color, and mostly Caucasian skin tones. There are some exceptions, but the color palette is generally somewhat muted. The colors are fairly desaturated and dark, which means that dark speed paint colors and pastel acrylic paints will be really useful. White and black paints are pretty vital, and the bright ivory works great as a universal highlight color. Flesh tones are really tricky to mix on your own, so I've opted to add a couple of those colors to this core set. A bright silver or chrome color will be good for highlighting up our metallic surfaces to make them really bright, and we can add some brown speed paint to this to get a nice gold color, or we can add any other speed paints to get different colors of metal. Past that, I just picked up a handful of colors that seemed like a good fit. A couple of them, like the red, are already fairly desaturated, but we can always make the vibrant colors like the yellow and green look less intense by mixing black, white, or other colors into them. Also notably, I'm completely missing any sort of blue acrylic color, but that's not really too prevalent in any of the character artwork, and we can always use the blue speed paint if we need to introduce some cool tones into the shadows. And as far as priming the minis, honestly anything works. Most of the time I'll probably be using a gray rattle can primer, but anything you have will work, even brush on primer, though that just takes a little bit longer. I will also be varnishing all of my minis with matte varnish. This is not necessary. Honestly, I've played games with minis that I never varnished and have never really noticed any paint chipping or rubbing off. But because I have an airbrush, I'll be airbrush varnishing most of my minis, but a rattle can like Rust-Oleum 2X Clear Matte, Tester's Spray, Krylon Matte Finish, or anything else will work just fine. So I think that about sums up my plan. I'm super excited to start working on this series. Please let me know what you want to see out of this painting series, or any thoughts or questions you might have along the way. I do my best to respond to every message, and I'm happy to help out where I can. And regardless of if you're following along with this painting project or not, if there's one thing I want people to take away from this series, it's that whatever you're working on, you can do it. I think on a fundamental level, each of us has the amazing human ability to learn over time, so no matter your skill level, if you keep painting, then you'll also keep improving. And if you're completely new to mini painting, then congratulations! You will be absolutely amazed by how much your skills progress after painting even your first, 10 or 15 minis. And that's all I've got, so I'll see you in the first painting tutorial video. Bennett from the future here. Even after editing the footage together at 2x speed, there's still a pretty good chunk left. So rather than cut it, I'll just let the video play out if you feel inclined to watch it. And again, this is way more complicated and all over the place than my actual tutorials will be, so don't worry at all if the way I'm painting this matte marker thing looks a bit intimidating. And that's all I've got for real. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.